Welcome back to the Mostly Legal podcast, a show where we tell the stories of people who make law firms operate. I'm Amanda Koplos, Chief Operating Officer at Sheffield Lohman.
And I'm Rob Joyner, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Centerbase.
We're kicking off season 4 with none other than Elyssa Goldstein, COO of Ram Law. And yes, we're going to get the story behind that name. Spoiler alert, there's a mascot involved. Elyssa is also the 2025-2026 President-elect of the Association of Legal Administrators.
Elyssa's career path is one a lot of our listeners will relate to. She started at the front desk and worked her way up to COO. Along the way, she found her passion for legal management, built her leadership skills through the Association of Legal Administrators, and even managed to keep her love for sports and music alive.
We're going to cover everything from career growth and advocating for yourself to why working at a law firm doesn't have to be a temporary gig. And, of course, why getting involved in ALA can literally change your career.
If you're someone who helps run a law firm, whether you're a legal administrator, office manager, COO, or even thinking about your next career move, this episode is for you.
So grab your coffee, maybe a bagel if you want to make Elyssa happy, and let's get season 4 started. We are kicking off season 4 with our first guest today. We have Elyssa Goldstein. She is the COO of a law firm you affectionately call Ram Law. Will you tell us what those letters stand for? Because I tried to pronounce it and there's a lot.
Sure. Ram Law stands for Rebenak, Arano, and Miscolo.
Okay, but you use Ram Law affectionately and also...
Yes, we do. We do. Rocco the Ram is our mascot and we are proud of it. Yes.
Do you have like a little stuffed animal mascot?
Oh, no, we have a full costume.
Do people like stand on the street corner in this costume? Or,
no,
or like, how do you use
I feel like that might borderline on the advertising clause, of PI law, but at events and things like that, we force some poor soul to be inside the Rocco costume.
Awesome. Great. Well, one of the things we do on the show is we don't read bios. We let our guests introduce themselves and tell us what they feel is most important. So why don't you get started and tell us a little bit about yourself real quick?
I started in law as a receptionist in 2009, was eventually promoted to an office manager role in 2013, which is when I joined the ALA. So I've been a member 12 years now, just about 12 years. Instantly upon joining the ALA, I got involved with our local New Jersey chapter, eventually served on that board, started to take on international leadership roles, and here I sit today, a member of the board of directors and the president-elect of the association.
It's a good run through. You didn't tell us you have an undergraduate degree in music.
Yes, I have a bachelor's in music vocal performance, which maybe only will serve me well in this particular podcast episode. I don't know as far as my delivery, but on the day-to-day, I don't necessarily use music in my job, although it is a big part of my personal life, writing, playing, singing, things like that. So I conned my parents into letting me do that for 4 years, instead of taking intensive tests or writing papers, I was just writing songs and kind of like skipping around the quad. So
Elyssa, I feel like you did that on purpose and didn't tell us about this undergrad degree because you know the next thing we're going to ask. Can you sing something for us?
Not today, but
oh, come on.
The appropriate thing would be direct people to some sort of page that I don't have. But there's songs out there for those with sleuthing skills. You can find something.
Can I find you on YouTube if I really want to?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Show notes again.
YouTube. Call me and I will find directly. Rob, funny story. One time we were at an event and Elyssa was there and I needed to get everybody into the room. And you know how sometimes at conferences they walk around with those little dun, dun, dun bells? Right. Well, I just had Elyssa like belt out at the top of her lungs. And I can't remember what the song was.
It was Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody, because we were about to do your flash mob rehearsal.
Oh, that's right.
Elyssa, I'm having a hard time like picturing this. Can you reenact for us?
I would sing, but I'm in my office, and I feel like it would be disconcerting to people. So,
I need to try to get that out of you.
Keep trying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. They don't need to know that part of me.
Oh, okay. Well, so we'll dive in just a little bit here. Rob, do you want to start with the first question?
Yeah. So, Elyssa, one thing you mentioned was your journey, and you started call it at the bottom, right? At the receptionist desk. Then you moved all the way up to COO throughout your career with the firm. Can you talk to us about some of those key turning points and what really propelled you to make those big jumps within the firm?
Sure. And I think there's several. Also just I changed firms. So I think that does help sometimes people get further ahead, which is in any career or any walk of life. Sometimes you want a higher position or you want a different opportunity that's just not afforded to you where you are. So you have to make a move to do so. But I think what initially sparked the passion for me in legal management, because I went into the receptionist role truly thinking that it was going to be a temporary gig, that I would be, comfortable enough on the phones and I would figure out, or I would hit it big in my music career and I wouldn't have to do this much longer. Something akin to that was my thought process going in. But I was very, very lucky that I had an incredible office manager at the time. Her name is Maria Florio. She is the current president of the New Jersey chapter of the Association of Legal Administrators. We've stayed friends, all of this time, but she was my first boss. And she quickly identified, within probably 2 weeks of me working at the firm, hey, you can do more than answer the phones. If you want to contribute more, I'm happy to teach you anything and everything that you're interested in learning, give you more responsibility, and, kind of have you serve as an assistant to me, which is what I ultimately ended up doing. Really anything that she needed, I was pitching in on. I started working on billing projects and did a number of years kind of dealing with billing. And for those who are involved in that hourly billing, outside counsel guidelines and what you can and cannot bill. And it's a very sort of tedious and meticulous task.
I don't know why anybody would do that for a living.
I loved it. It was great.
You always tell me how much you love billing because it's rule-based.
Well, Elyssa, I have to ask,
sure.
Did they let you sing the hold music?
Let it go. Let it go.
No, but I can't.
But if you call into my current office today, I am a part of the answering the IVR that you will receive.
Small win.
So, but without tunage to it. So that was a big point, I think, is just having a manager who dedicated time to me and was willing to train. It can be and I even see it now in my own job. Sometimes you have so many things to handle that you forget to kind of cultivate the next generation or those around you. And I've always really tried to hold on to that and develop skills where there are opportunities to do so. So I think that was the first major turning point. The second was joining the ALA. When I was promoted to office manager, I went from being somebody's, lunch buddy one day to their boss the next, which was a very stark transition, especially at my age. I was mid-20s at the time. Mm-hmm. So you're now managing people, several decades older than me who've been doing this a lot longer. Right. And there was so much to learn. So, getting involved in ALA, internationally and at my local chapter, which, has always been a very strong chapter of the association, was critically important. And then, getting further opportunities to be an office manager, then to move on and be a firm administrator. And now, I've been with my current firm 7 years. I did the first really 7 or 6.5 as their firm administrator. And then, have been working the past 2 years to kind of flesh out a COO role that would be appropriate for a smaller firm, ensure that I was really contributing at a higher or strategic level, and kind of shift into this next phase in my career. And ultimately, I'd love to wind up at a big firm one day. But for right now, in these 7 years that I've been here, the growth that we've been able to do together, because we have that trust and I've had those other opportunities in my career to sort of level up each day, if you will, has kind of gotten me to where I am today.
Elyssa, you mentioned kind of carving out the COO position for yourself, and I'm guessing you worked with the shareholders at the firm to do so. I think that's something that's interesting to a lot of our listeners. Can you talk for a minute about how you did that?
So I think my tenacity is probably the number one reason.
What is that a euphemism for, Elyssa?
Strong arming? I don't know. No, I'm kidding. But I think that, something I find is that, and I'll play a little bit of a gender role for a moment. Historically, women tend to be much more passive in their career paths. Now, that's not everyone, and that's certainly not me, and certainly not Amanda sitting on this podcast episode today. But we tend not to advocate for ourselves in the way historically that men have. So I've always been one to say, hey, what's the worst that can happen? You have to ask or you have to try. So about 2 years ago, when I started comparing, my job description and the things that I handled on a daily basis to the job descriptions or the, general rundown of other colleagues who had COO titles, I felt that there was a lot of alignment. I really felt that where I was in my career, I could lend a higher value. I mean, there's certainly merit in keeping the lights on, as one of my bosses likes to say. But I was excited about the growth of my firm, the direction that we wanted to head in, the fact that I had built this camaraderie and partnership with my partners for the last 5 years. And I felt like I could really move us in that direction. So it was a little bit of a prove it type of model that I did. I think I walked in hoping that they would just sort of give it to me because I felt like I had done a lot of it, but there were some things that we were able to identify, some, financial analysis or some, realignment of staffing models or two things I can think of off the top of my head that I did do and sort of show that I had the capacity to do so and that the skill set to do so. And I think that I continued to stay in the conversation and continuing to work hard and prove myself and have the conversations and reiterate my desire for this role was really what had us come together at the end of the day. And it was, I don't think that if I had asked, they ever would have done it because it just wasn't on their radar as a small firm, of 30, 35 people. But I think when they realized, the time and the effort and the care that I was putting into fleshing this out and moving us to this next phase of our firm, they were comfortable making that change.
That's excellent. I really appreciate that. And I love the tenacity because you're right. I do think there's a lot of people who do not advocate for what they want. And it can be very difficult to put yourself out there at any point in your life. And it can also be very difficult to do it at your firm because if they do, if they say no, you have to decide whether that's okay and whether you're okay staying there or whether you have to leave if you don't get it. So I really appreciate that story. Now, one thing I'd like to ask you about, you are what I like to call a legacy. So ALA membership runs in your family. Your mother was a member of ALA. Can you tell me a little bit about what that's like, having that, shoes to fill in front of you and having, we always think about, I'll never do what my parents do as a career. And then we end up doing exactly what our parents do as a career.
Right. So yes, I was staunchly avoiding law firm life, and not because my mom didn't seem to enjoy it, but because I didn't necessarily want to follow in her footsteps. And of course, music was a passion and that's what I wanted to do. But when the opportunity arose, one thing about me is and it can be a blessing and a curse, is that if I'm very passionate about something, I will commit 150,000% to it. It's something that I go full throttle with. So once I started to gain an interest in legal management and understand that there could be a career, the deterrent of, well, I'm following in a parent's footsteps was no longer there. I think something that I really appreciate about this legacy is that my mom and I are very different people. We have different senses of humor, different, hobbies, things like that. But what has really connected us and helped strengthen our relationship, as I've moved more into adulthood and we see each other, on a little bit more of an equal level versus always parent-child dynamic, is the fact that we share a career. She is one of the smartest people that I know, hands down. I call her often and say, there was just something last week. Hey, I have to have a conversation with an employee and I'm not sure how I would approach it. And, she'll give me the time and we'll talk things out or things like that. And she's got that understanding where she's been through things before. So I think, having her on my side is super important. And she was really the one who encouraged me. I don't know if I would have heard of ALA otherwise, maybe through Maria, probably. Although when I was promoted, she was no longer working there. She left and sort of in the end, I indirectly filled her spot. But, once I got that promotion, my mom, who was a Palm Beach County chapter member at the time, basically told me there was no choice. You had to do this. This was something you had to do. You're not going to be able to survive without it. And I'm super glad she did. And the fact that we've, both been chapter presidents and, both really contributed to an association that's given us so much is something really unique and special.
Yeah, for sure. But I think the strong arming happens whether it's your mom or not. I feel like that's how I got involved in ALA too. So getting harassed in an elevator by somebody.
Right. Somebody finds you.
Somebody finds you.
It's such a great group, though. They always talk about it can be lonely up top. And the ALA really gives you those resources for people that maybe don't have their mom or following in their mom's footsteps to get some of that exposure and help with some of those questions. So, Elyssa, you are going to knock Amanda off as the youngest president when you become president.
There's this little twitch, right?
I didn't finish the question.
I know, but I'll let you finish and then I have a thought and then Elyssa can answer the question.
I was saying, Elyssa, you, congratulations.
Thank you.
Are going to be the youngest to take the seat of president of the ALA. Now, being the youngest, what's your vision for attracting more young professionals into legal management? And what would you say to those that, similar to yourself, might not see it as a long-term career path?
Sure. Amanda, do you want to go first?
Well, I just want to say that when I found out, that I was becoming the youngest president a couple of years ago, I was like, wow, it's awesome. And because it is a big accomplishment, you have to start an ALA young, mostly because in order to be at the career point where you're an administrator or you're in ALA, you're 25, 30, 35, and then you have some progression within ALA. So it's very difficult to do it before 40. It's let's see, I was 42. And so Alyssa's not going to be years younger than me.
Oh my gosh, just let it go.
Right. Amanda's going to timeanddate.com you with the exact number of days.
Here, Elyssa, here's your crown. Here's your crown. I'm putting a crown on your head.
Thank you.
But your question is a very good point in that it's very difficult to find people as passionate early in their career to take the step and then grow up in that. So before I rudely interrupted, I think Rob's question was, what's your vision for attracting more of the young professionals to legal management?
I think it's the conversing and the listening. Sometimes earlier on in my career, when I was younger, I felt that maybe my age didn't lend credence to my knowledge or my opinion. And that was not everyone, but I certainly encountered people, throughout my career where they didn't really care what I had to say. I wasn't doing it as long as them. And therefore I was automatically disqualified. So I think that there is merit in every thought, opinion, and experience. And that's something that I want to, continue to permeate our ALA culture with. And I think there has been a shift. I go to lots of events and I have seen younger members, but when I have conversations with them, to the second part of your question, Rob, it's a little bit, I'm doing this for right now, or I'm not really sure, or I stumbled into it, like many of us do. I never thought ever that I was going to stay in this career path. Again, I was like, I can answer phones. How hard can it be? Hard. It's turned out to be
it is very
hard.
difficult.
That was my aloofness back then. So I think showing people that, again, I started, like you said, I started as a receptionist and now I'm COO of a law firm, and it didn't take me all that long in my life, 15 years, which might seem like a long time for some people, but it's not in the grand scheme of what I hope to accomplish. I think showing people that there really is an opportunity to do lots of different things and contribute in lots of different ways and grow your skill set. It's hard work. It's not something that you can just kind of walk through and punch a time card and go in and out. You're going to have to do a lot more, but that can be very rewarding. You can connect to all sorts of people. You can contribute in all sorts of ways. And I think that mentality is something that I try to carry with me, and I hope that others do as well. My name is not on the door of my law firm, right? There's only a very small group of states or territories that allow that. But I try to act like it is. I take my job just as seriously as the partners of my law firm do. I care about the success of the firm, our employees, making sure that everyone's comfortable working here. And I think that is because I've put in the time. Right. So it's investing in yourself so that in turn you can invest in the role that you have and kind of doubling down on those efforts. So you don't know what's available to you until you kind of take a look at the whole landscape. So I think ALA can offer the whole landscape to its members, and directing people down the right road or the right lane is something that I hope that I'm able to accomplish during my presidential tenure.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Centerbase, legal practice and management software designed to deliver optimal efficiency, profitability, and business growth for your mid-sized law firm. Learn more about how Centerbase helps you practice, manage, and grow your law firm with modern technology at centerbase.com. I love your answer. And Amanda, I'm going to go off script for a second and ask a question.
I have an off script question too, but you go first.
I'm going to go first.
Because it's all about you, Rob.
Oh, thank you. So I'm seeing a trend here. You know, you're talking about kind of standing up for yourself and going after that COO position. You're coming in and putting your name in the hat to be the youngest president of the ALA. With that, Elyssa, talk to me about your relationship with failure and the fear of failure. I think, you know, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily put themselves in the situation you do because they're scared to fail. You show up confidently, right? You're so well spoken. How do you manage that?
I think failure is inherent to everyone's journey. Very few people that I'm aware of haven't faced some adversity, and I certainly have. 2 examples, you know, in things that we've talked about today. It took me 2 years from walking into my partners and saying I'd like a COO position to actually get it. And there were times, and Amanda knows, where I was very sort of down on myself or thinking that I wasn't going to be able to accomplish it, or that, you know, this firm wasn't going to give me the opportunity that I was looking for and I would have to kind of restart. And, you know, those are things where I would talk to friends, colleagues, a lot of people through ALA that I had met, and, you know, kind of just get a little gut check, if you will. But also it's talking to yourself and realizing that if you feel something so passionately, you have to continue to work for it. The first no or the 10th no that you get doesn't mean it's a no forever. And again, that's where that tenacity comes in. And I think, you know, on an ALA level, I really wanted to be on the board. I wanted to have an opportunity to serve the association at the highest level and make that impact. And it took me 3 times to get on the board. Yeah. And, you know, I did get some really candid and important feedback throughout that process about maybe why I didn't make it, or why I was the last name on the cutting room floor, or even in this presidential journey, things I could do better to make myself more accessible and presentable to the membership. And I think all of that feedback is critical, even in the context of not achieving your goals. It's finding the gems in the failures, or the lessons in the failures that you can then, you know, build on and learn from for the future.
Thank you for sharing that, by the way. You know, a lot of people, they just see the updates on LinkedIn and all these positive things. They don't necessarily see the work you put in behind the scenes. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, Rob, we filled a lot of new ALA volunteer positions this year. And Elyssa was on a task force to help us fill these new positions. And we were really worried we were not going to get enough volunteers. And then we got a lot of volunteers, and we had to tell a lot of people no. And it is the hardest thing to do, which is have people willing to put their time forth to this association, to ALA, and then be told no. And so I think it's important. Like, there are positions I applied for that I didn't get as well. And so I think it is really important to hear from Elyssa. She also told me she would run for president like 45 times if she needed to. But but I think
I'm glad that didn't happen, though. It is a grueling process.
It really is a grueling process. But being on other volunteer positions is not as grueling. And so, you know, I've said this to all the members. I said it in my letter, and I'll continue to say it. If you didn't get selected the first time, it's not because we were choosing between A++ and A+ people. And sometimes it had nothing to do. Sometimes the failure has nothing to do with anything you can correct. And that's not just in volunteerism, right? Sometimes your failure it's outside of your control, right? And so I do have kind of a counter question, and I'm going to throw this out there. We talk about working hard and asking for things and moving up the ladder. one of the things I've discovered in a younger generation, it's maybe millennials, Elyssa, you're a millennial now, and, or in the Zoomers, is the desire to move up very quickly, to expect after you've only worked for a year or two that you're ready for the next title, that you're ready for the next promotion. And it's frustrating as a elder millennial. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a Gen X. It's frustrating as Gen X to sit there and say, oh, well, you've only been here a year. I've put 20 years in on this and I'm just now getting there. So how do you encourage those people? How do you encourage people that it's okay if you don't get that promotion yet? And you do have to put in your time, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Well, I think what's important to start with is that there has to be some meeting in the middle. I sort of straddle, yes, I am an elder millennial, so I'm straddling generations a little bit. I think probably my mindset is a little bit older, whereas maybe, some of the ways that I conduct myself might be a little bit younger in just, again, the culture that I am surrounded by. So I think I'm in a unique role, and I would say that I'm more of, hey, I did this, now reward me type of person, at times. But from a managerial side, I see the benefit of, again, working hard, proving yourself, developing a skill set, rounding out sort of who you are as a worker. But I think there has to be a little bit of a shift. I waited 20 years for a promotion mindset of days past will no longer work. This generation changes jobs too quickly. There's too many opportunities available. There's always an opportunity to level up. And I think that workplaces and law firms, which tend to be very inflexible, do need to adopt a little bit of a more rapid promotion model. But to the employee point, it is identifying the opportunities that may be available to you in the future. Okay, so I can't promote you. I actually just had a conversation with an employee who's a legal secretary who wants to be a paralegal. And we do have, those are sort of different levels for us at our firm. I know they're sometimes interchangeable.
In many firms they are, yeah. Yeah.
And that person has only been with us about 6 months, although they did a little bit of work prior at another firm. And I explained to this person, if I move you now, I'm setting you up for failure because we have not taught you everything that you need to know. We will teach you everything that you need to know. Here's the next step. Here's some things that I'd like you to focus on. Here's opportunities for you to learn from XYZ person. And I think what could have been a chaotic or upsetting or I quit tomorrow conversation, again, it has been a short while since we had this conversation, but so far it was very positive. This person realized that I wasn't saying no to them forever, to go back to the earlier point, but no to them now, and kind of promising where I'm going to meet them so that we can move through this together. I think saying, no, you're not ready and giving people nothing upon which to improve is not helpful. So you have to, if you want to develop your people and, grow your culture, you have to work with them to get them those opportunities. But there's something also to be said. If someone will never get it,
to be just being honest. Yeah.
Is to be honest also. Be honest also.
No, I agree. Okay. So you have mentioned your work ethic quite a few times. And I will have to tell you, Rob, and I will readily admit this. There are many times I feel outworked by Elyssa because she puts in the hours. And, I did that, I feel like, younger in my career. But when I took this job, I asked my managing partner a question that was really important to me. And I think it's something I recommend people ask. Can this job reasonably be done in 40 hours a week or less? Right. So, and I always recommend that, especially if you're taking a salaried position or a leadership position, because if it can't reasonably be done in 40 hours a week or less, maybe that's okay, but you need to know that. And so sometimes I feel like hours of the day, Elyssa's always on. She sleeps so much less than I do. I don't even know how she operates on the little bit of sleep. But when you're thinking about that work ethic, first of all, where does that come from? And then also, how do you kind of maintain your work-life balance? What is your philosophy on that?
Sure. Work ethic comes from both of my parents. Obviously my mom she still works in a law firm today, although I'm sure she'd like not to and to be done pretty soon, but she has a few more years.
Is there an exit strategy for that? I would like to know.
Yeah, I think she's working on it. For the majority of my life, she worked, I think my first few years she was working part-time or staying home, and my sister was born as well, but I always had two working parents. My dad was a doctor. He owned his own practice. So in addition to being a doctor, he had to be a business person.
Yeah.
And people depended on him for a salary and a job, and his patients depended on him, and he worked long hours. But I always felt as if my parents, whenever I needed them, to show up for, obviously with my musical background, I did a lot of plays and I played sports and things like that. Did they attend every single thing? No, they didn't. But they attended the things that were important to me, and they knew when to be there. And I never felt not supported by them. So I think, there's something to be said for that. Now, I'm not a parent, so I don't have children who depend on me, and Amanda does. So that's a little bit of a different dynamic, but I do have, or not, but I do have people in my life who I want to see on a regular basis and spend time with. So that balance is important. I think that if you are passionate about something, you have to make the time for it. I will tell you that I have a few phrases that if I hear them, they're immediate turnoffs, and, I don't have time for something is a real trigger for me.
Yeah.
Because, it means it's just not important to me. Now, yes, there's something to be said for sleep and mental health and physical health and things like that. And all those things are important. But for now, for the next few years, through June of 2028, as I've been telling people, my focus is ALA. Luckily, I am doing it young, and I'm going to have a long life, hopefully, ahead of me after ALA to do other things and spend time or dedicate my time in other ways. But for now, this is what I feel most passionately about, and I've carved out the time to do so. Again, I've had conversations with my managing partners about how we're going to balance everything, and I know I need to be a better delegator, and that's something I have to work. Speaking of failure, that's something I have to work on. It's a constant failure for me, but I don't think there's anything wrong with working hard at the things that you're passionate about. And that will mean making sacrifices in other areas, but it doesn't mean that they're permanent sacrifices.
With what you're saying, I just want to jump up and down and get your energy that you're bringing to the conversation is wonderful.
Rob, now listen, I don't want to say Rob works really hard too. He gets up at 4 a.m. and does an entire job before he does his job. So I don't want to take any credit away from you, Rob. Maybe it's just me who's just the slacker in this conversation.
No, hardly.
You just, as Elyssa said, you have to pick out what's important to you,
right?
And figure out how you work those things out. Just sleep, sure, but you cut out. I've had to cut out things in my life too, right?
Yeah.
Amanda, you like to make fun of me that I don't have many friends. And
I don't think that has anything to do with time of the day, Rob.
Well, that's what I blame it on.
Sure.
So I'll leave it there. Let's move on to the next question.
Being your friend is a sacrifice, so I get it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your friendship.
Happy to take one for the team.
Anyways, Elyssa, in the pre-call, we were talking about the distinction between personal and professional development. Can you break down the differences for us and share the importance of investing in both and how that's helped shape your career trajectory and also your leadership style too?
Yeah, I will try to break down or delineate between the two. And I may defer to Amanda for a little bit of it. I think there's a lot of overlap inherently in just development in general. ALA is wonderful for catering to both sides of the coin, right? We do more technical programs or talks where you're learning, something coming up in New Jersey. We passed a pay transparency law, which I know New York and a few other states have. So there's a workshop coming up, about how you're going to tailor your job postings and, do a pay analysis and right set your ranges and things like that. And that's very technical. And I've already lost people and they've turned this off. And that's fine. But ALA
not our
also,
audience. They all just geeked out over it. Trust me.
But ALA also has, again, how to be an authoritative leader, how to deliver feedback or constructive criticism, how to, I believe there is a program coming up one of my colleagues in New Jersey is doing at the annual conference about sort of the mental health and taking care of yourself so that you can take care of your team. Those are all really, really important things, and they bleed into one another. There's times where I've taken the mental health first aid course twice with ALA, which is a wonderful opportunity that is available to our members. And it has helped me just personally check in and say, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling stressed, or I need to take a little bit of a break. And, am I really going about things in the proper way? And in turn, it's helped me deal with some pretty serious situations in my office, and how am I going to navigate through those conversations and make sure that people have the right resources and that, I'm providing the appropriate care and not overstepping my boundaries and things like that. So that's just one example of where it served a dual purpose. I think that there are many, we talk about at the, the board level, why are there so many people who work for law firms who are not members of ALA? And I think it's explaining to them that time that they're investing both professionally and personally will serve them in spades going forward.
Right.
Sometimes you can't explain it to people until they're in it and they realize it. But, to harken back to the volunteer process, we had a lot of new names, people who have never submitted their name to do anything before. And we asked them why. And they said they just felt this connection to the way that we were kind of shifting the association and kind of the messaging that we were putting out with our new mission, vision, and strategic direction. And they felt really connected and they wanted to get involved. And, they never thought to do so before because they just didn't want to take the time, right? We heard that a lot.
Yeah.
But it's one little spark. It's one little, flint to the flame that will engage people and serve them so well in their careers. So again, it's a sacrifice, right? Maybe I can't go to every Yankees. I do go to a lot of Yankees.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I can't do every single thing that I want to do, or maybe take every vacation or attend every event. But, I've made this my career, and it's the thing that allows me to do other things. So I think there has to be that dedication to it, and taking an hour of time or a couple hours of time to better yourself as a person and as a worker. I don't see what's wrong with that. So
thank you.
Hey,
I love that. It's my turn for a question. Go ahead though.
Elyssa, I just saw a headline yesterday. Which New York team's going to be better this baseball season?
Oh, well, for the sake of everyone in my life, I hope it's the Yankees.
I'm not a baseball person, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I was just curious.
Elyssa is really into sports. And when I say really into sports, she's like that person who knows things about sports. Like when there's sports trivia, she's the person in the room that you call to make sure that you have a sports trivia person. And she has a passion for a couple of different teams. Right now, it is, not always. It's always been. You love the Yankees. You love the Patriots.
I love the Knicks.
You love the Knicks.
I wonder if they'll ever win a championship before I'm in the ground, but we can only hope. I love tennis also. I watch a lot of tennis. I love the Olympics, things like that. I like sports because I like competition.
Yeah.
No.
Oh yeah, Rob, let me tell you how much Elyssa loves competition. So last year Elyssa came and stayed at our house for a couple of days.
Oh boy.
And my son, he'll turn 12 next week. It was 11, and he's really just starting to get into basketball. Now he's got my genes, so he's 4'2" or whatever. He's very short, and he challenges Elyssa to basketball. And he looks at her and he goes, "I can take her." And Alyssa's like, "My knees, I got the knees of an 18-year-old. Let's go." So she asked me ahead of time, should I take it easy on him? And I said, well, don't destroy him. He's a kid. She proceeds to wreck this poor kid.
Good for you.
Competition is competition. And so he'd go up to shoot something and she would just paw it down. And she had height on him, right? And she's
for sure.
But he said, he came in after, I don't really like Elyssa very much. And I was like, why? Because you lost? Like, she showed you up. You underestimated her. Don't underestimate Elyssa.
Yeah. He loves me now, though. I don't know what flipped, because I really still dominated him in everything he did. But eventually, I think he just accepted it and was like, this is the dynamic, and came back to the other side. But he will very shortly be kicking my butt, no doubt. Once he gets that height, he's quite an athletic and adorable kid. So Amanda's a great mom. She's got 2 good kids at home.
I don't know how much height he's going to get. I'm 5'0", but we're hoping. I'm holding out hope for him. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about your passions. Elyssa has a lot other than sports. She's also really into music, like concerts, and she's seen everything on Broadway there ever is. And when like the Oscars come on, she's that person who's actually seen the movies, where Rob, you and I are never even heard of the movies.
I don't even turn it on.
Right. No, she has a whole running diary where she tracks not only what everybody's wearing, but also the movies and whether she agrees or doesn't agree. And it's always very fascinating to me. But I think the thing you are the most passionate about is your love for your home state. The, as you put it, greatest state in the union, New Jersey. New Jersey gets a rap. At our last board meeting, we were in New Jersey, and we had a whole table full of jokes about New Jersey. But tell us, What captures your heart? What keeps you rooted there? What do you love about Jersey?
A very obvious and basic answer would be that most of my friends and family are here, and I love them and I want to be close to them. But I live in northern New Jersey, so I think there's also a very important distinction between northern New Jersey and southern New Jersey. So when I say the city, I mean New York City. When South Jersey people say the city, they mean Philadelphia, which I don't even acknowledge as a city in the world. So I'm just kidding. Philadelphia's fine. There's lovely people there.
There's sandwiches or something.
Right. I don't know. There's something with a cheesesteak.
They might have won a Super Bowl.
Right. That's true. Patriots.
It's okay. I'm a Cowboys fan. I mean, it hurts for me too.
Yeah, it's fine. Good luck with your new head coach. That's going to work out well.
Who is he?
Brian Schottenheimer, career assistant, as Jerry Jones described him, which is exactly how you want your head coach to be described, as a career assistant. But like I said, always shoot for your goals. Always advocate for yourself. So I appreciate you, Brian. You go for it. But I digress. So, I feel like I have everything that I could possibly want. Amazing food. There is something special about the water in New Jersey where the bagels and pizza just taste better. It is 100% a fact. I am very close to New York City, so I get to see my sports teams regularly. I mean, pretty much every artist always makes a stop to New York City on a concert tour. So there's really very few things that I haven't seen. I love Broadway, as Amanda mentioned. So, getting to see shows and really just popping in and popping out, and it takes me, 30 minutes to get in is a luxury. I know that I am very blessed to live where I live. It is expensive to live here. I wish it was slightly less expensive, but this is what I know. And this is, the culture side and the variety of interests that I have. I think it helps me to connect to people. And if we're bringing everything full circle, that's what I want to do during my presidency. And Amanda's done a great job during hers, is having conversations with people, making people feel important, and not in a disingenuous way, but hearing people out and allowing them to, voice, positives and negatives, questions and concerns. And that's something that I hope to continue to do. And by having a wide variety of interests, it allows me to have a quick conversation with someone. Again, you brought up the Cowboys. That's not a team I follow, but I know a little bit about what's going on with them. And we were able to connect, albeit in a joking way, in a brief moment. So will I know everything about everything that is passionate to our members? No. But, if I don't know about something, I'm hoping that they can teach me.
Awesome. Well, you officially know more about the Cowboys than Rob, just based on that one conversation.
We're struggling in Dallas right now. I'll just say that.
You've made some interesting...
And Luca, too. It's been a really tough time.
Yeah, don't even say that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Don't even say that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we have had a great conversation here. We have the very last segment coming up. And this is a segment we call Pitch Your Passion. And it really just gives you a couple of minutes. You are passionate about a lot of things. We've gone through them. But it really just gives you a few minutes to tell us what what drives you, what you're passionate about, what it is. So we'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much for also having me. It's been great to chat with you two today. I really appreciate the opportunity to do so. I mean, we have touched on a lot of things. I think I just want to reiterate that there's nothing wrong with working hard and dedicating yourself to something that you are passionate about. And I think that the shift that I'm about to make and the time that I'm about to dedicate to ALA will continue to form me. I am very different, when I first joined ALA in 2013 than I am today in 2025. I've really grown up in the association and become a much more well-rounded, I think, more thoughtful, more empathetic, more relatable person. Again, that tenacity that I had when I was younger could sometimes come off as brashness or, egotism. And I hope that I don't show that now. I hope that there's, a bit of levity to everything that I do, but also a bit of humility as well. And that has only allowed me to be that way because I've learned from other people. So again, work hard, dedicate yourself to a cause, and learn from those around you. Even if you think you've got the best way, there's always a little tip or trick to be picked up from somebody else. So, that is what I'm passionate about. It's that connection. It's that learning. It's that ever evolving mindset, and know that you're really never going to be fully formed. You're always a work in progress, and, there'll be failures, but that doesn't mean that you've stalled all progress.
Awesome.
Elyssa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you for having me, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Mostly Legal podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
Stay tuned as we uncover more behind-the-scenes stories of law firms with the best minds in the business. And Rob.
Thanks.